Hello, everybody. Come on in. Today, we're going to chat a little bit about the Menendez brothers, right? I'm sure a lot of you um, remember this story about the brothers unaliving their mother and father, going to jail. They've been in jail for 35 years. Um, that this all happened. Um, let's see. At their Beverly Hills home in 1989, right? That they unalived their parents, Jose and Mary Louise, or she went by Kitty Menendez. Um, they at first claimed that there were unknown intruders were responsible, framing it as a potential mob killing, right? Police initially investigated this claim but grew suspicious to the brothers' spending and their hiring of a computer expert to delete their father's recently updated will. Eric confessed to the murders in sessions with his psychologist, citing a desire to be free of a controlling father with high standards, which led to their arrest months later. Okay. So, the psychologist had told his girlfriend about what Eric had said. And lo and behold, when the psychologist and the girlfriend broke up, she reported everything to the police. So unlucky, right? Menendez brothers were unlucky. Um, I just want to say something here that public outcry and even their family wants them home. Okay. Um, guys, according to the United States laws, people are considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. These men were proven guilty by a jury of their peers. So, for all intents and purposes, in this video, we are considering them guilty. I mean, they did kill their parents. So, the point now is they're hoping to be released, right? Now, if you look at the picture on this page, these guys look like just your average young preppy college students, right? Well, let's look at their background a little bit and see what we think. Um, so, Joseph Lyle, who goes by his middle name, was born on January 10th, and 1968. And Kitty, their mom, quit her teaching job after Lyle was born, and the family moved to New Jersey. And Eric Galen was born on November 27th, 1970. So they're 2 years apart, okay? The dad, Jose, became an executive at Hertz Corporation and later at RCA Records. After he was appointed as the CEO of Live Entertainment, the family moved to Calabasas, California. And in 1988, Lyle and Eric committed multiple burglaries in their neighborhood, stealing more than $100,000 in cash and jewelry, prompting Jose to move to Beverly Hills. The following year, Eric attended Beverly Hills High School, where he earned average grades but displayed a talent for tennis, ranking 44th in the U.S. as a junior. So he was a very talented tennis player. And about 2 weeks before the murders, Eric and his friend Michael Joyce entered the 1989 Boys Junior National Tennis Championship. Lyle, in the meantime, attended Princeton University, where he was placed on academic probation for poor grades and eventually suspended for plagiarism. He lived in the Goss Hall dormitory, where he threw out his roommates' belongings as he did not wish to share a room. He left sinks overflowing, causing damage, and repainted his room in violation of university rules. In high school, Eric wrote an amateur screenplay with his classmate called Friends. And Friends was a story about a rich young man who killed his parents in the perfect murder for the inheritance money. Okay. So we see that these boys had a background of theft. Obviously, they were troubled. And new information has come out that they were indeed essayed by their father. Okay. Do I believe this? Yes, I do. One of the cousins came up, spoke about it. Not only that, but a member of the boy band Menuno came out and said that the Menendez father, Jose, had also essayed him, and he was very young at the time that it happened. Other evidence shows that around the time, just before the murders, Eric wanted to go to a different college, and it was out of town. And Eric was really looking forward to being out of that home. Lyle was already out of the home, going to Princeton. But when he told his dad that's where he wanted to go, Jose said, "No, you're going to go to UCLA and you will live here." And Eric felt that that meant that the abuse was going to continue. So when his brother came home, he talked to Lyle about it. And Lyle did not realize that this was still going on. And he got very upset, for his little brother. On August 18th, 1989, Lyle and Eric went to several gun stores in Southern California to buy handguns. However, due to issues with Lyle's California driver's license and a 2-week waiting period mandated by gun laws, the brothers decided to purchase shotguns instead. They acquired Mossberg 12-gauge shotguns along with boxes of birdshot and buckshot ammunition in a Big Five sporting goods store in San Diego, California, where Eric used a stolen driver's license from Lyle's friend Donovan Goodrow. Okay. On the evening of August 20th, Jose and Kitty were watching The Spy Who Loved Me in the theater den of their Beverly Hills mansion when Lyle and Eric entered the den carrying loaded shotguns. Jose was shot 6 times, including a fatal shot to the back of his head. Kitty was shot 10 times in total. Before the fatal shot to her cheek, she was on the ground crawling away. Lyle ran to the car where Eric handed him ammunition to reload before firing the fatal shot to her face. Immediately after the killing, both brothers remained in the house for a few minutes, expecting the police to respond due to the noise. They left to dispose of their clothes that were stained with blood, and they later buried the pew-pews somewhere along Mulholland Drive. They also went to a movie theater and attempted to purchase tickets for the film Batman, but abandoned the plan due to the timestamp on the ticket stub. Then they headed to the Taste of LA Festival at Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. After returning home and finding no police presence, Lyle called 911 and emotionally told the operator, "Someone killed my parents." Eric was supposedly heard screaming and then crying in the background. When the police arrived, they did not see gunshot residue tests from the brothers, which would have indicated that they had recently discharged a firearm. Lyle and Eric both falsely told officers that they were elsewhere. So the police believed them, and I suppose it's because Beverly Hills, nothing happened there ever, right? Or very, very few crimes. Retired police detective Dan Stewart stated, "I've seen a lot of homicides, but nothing quite that brutal." He said it was really bad, really bad. Eventually, after the unaliving, the brothers went on spending sprees. They were buying luxury items, businesses they were buying. They were traveling. They were just doing. Eric hired a full-time tennis coach, and he competed in a series of tournaments overseas. Yeah, they were just spending this money, right? There was a $650,000 life insurance policy that they received. So until Eric confessed to the psychologist, who was Jerome Oziel, who later told his mistress, I'm not going to say her name, that was when they were finally caught. Okay. The first trial was 1993 to 1994. And that ended. Jurors deliberated for over a month, and that ended as a hung jury. Okay. Not going to go into all the details of that, but that pretty much ended as a hung jury. Then, the second trial, it was less publicized. There were no cameras in the courtroom like there were on the first trial. Okay. And this was held in 1995 and 1996. And the judge would not allow cameras in the courtroom because it would increase the risk that the jurors would be exposed to information and commentary about the case outside the courtroom. It was huge, guys. It was really huge. So, Lyle did not testify in that second trial. Both brothers were eventually convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder with first-degree M with special circumstances for lying in wait, as well as conspiracy to M. In the penalty phase of the trial, they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Okay. So then they filed appeals and all this stuff. And in the meantime, on July 2nd, 1996, Lyle married Anna Erickson at a ceremony. But they divorced on April 1st after Erickson discovered that Lyle was cheating on her with another woman. Now, keep in mind, guys, because of their charges, they were not allowed conjugal visits. So this actual cheating was emotional cheating kind of deal. It wasn't, they were not allowed conjugal visits. On June 12, 1999, Eric married Tammy Ruth Sackerman in a prison waiting room. He said their wedding cake was a Twinkie they improvised, and it was a very lonely night. And then Lyle ended up marrying again. I'm trying to think of I don't have that handy right now. But anyway, Lyle ended up marrying again as well. Then a letter was found by an uncle of the boys. And they're not boys anymore. These were the wives. Okay. But it has just come out that Lyle and his wife have been separated for a while. They're not legally divorced. And she is still handling all of his personal affairs for him. They're friends yet. But this is the boys now, Eric and Lyle, respectively. They're, 50 some years of age. And their uncle found a letter that was written by, I don't know which one of them, stating that he had been abused. Okay. So they're saying that new information has now come out, and that's along with the member from Menuno stating that he had been abused as well. So now they're hoping, to be able to, at the very least, be paroled. Remember, they received life without parole. California has a law that says they can, when new information comes forward, they can look at a resentencing, okay, in their courts. They were just in court yesterday, I believe. I wanted to share my screen with you and just share a little bit about what happened in court. Okay, and this is by Court TV, actually, Vinnie Politan.
Menendez brothers Lyle and Eric. In 1989, their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, were murdered. It was a shocking crime scene that looked like a mob hit. Jose and Kitty were shot several times as they sat on their couch, eating ice cream and watching a movie. At first, Eric and Lyle were treated as victims, but when their therapist's ex-girlfriend came forward with information that the brothers had confessed during therapy sessions, everything changed. Eventually, the brothers were charged. At trial, they claimed to be the victims of sex abuse and violence. The first juries could not reach a unanimous verdict, and there was a mistrial. But when they were retried, they were convicted, spared the death sentence, and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. But now there is new attention on the case, and many are calling for the Menendez brothers to get out. And today, another huge hearing in Los Angeles, and we have the latest on the Menendez brothers' battle for freedom.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And a big day, a lot of things always on the docket here at Court TV. But for a holiday week to be this busy, extremely unusual. But let's get to it. And we begin with the Menendez brothers. Come on, folks. They did it. They did it, okay? Everything that's happening now has nothing to do with the merits of the underlying charges, which are that they murdered their parents in a brutal way. They planned, they plotted it, and they executed it. They did not admit it after it happens. As a matter of fact, they covered it up. All of that is true. All of that is true. The new evidence that they say has come to light has nothing to do with anything related to the actual murder of their parents. Okay? What it is, it's really about one of the victims, Jose Menendez, their father, and was he a predator? Was he a predator or not? Some people believe he absolutely was. Some people believe he wasn't. The new evidence, or so-called new evidence, is connected to that and his actions, whether he had abused one of the members of the Menudo boy band years ago to sort of validate the fact that, yeah, this guy was a predator. He was a bad man. Then you have this letter that was allegedly written by Eric Menendez to a cousin, talking about his father and his fear of his father prior to the murders and taking place. All of this has to do with Jose Menendez. But don't forget, this is a double murder. Kitty, also a victim. And they had to reload to kill Kitty. And this is, say what you want about Jose Menendez. Kitty Menendez was not a threat to these two young men. Regardless of what you think about her participation or allowing her boys to be sexually abused by her husband, you can make whatever arguments you want there. But once Jose Menendez is taken out, Kitty is no longer a threat. What she is a witness, number one, and number two, she's also someone that would have access or have the rights to the family's money. Okay, now you can talk about psychological damage. Yeah, there are arguments there if you want to make them. But when you talk about like an actual physical threat or threat to do something to the boy, no, not so much. And that's when, from my perspective, when I look at this case, I have to look at the double murder, but I have to separate the murders and look at each one individually, each victim individually, and why were they taken out. I think it's important. So
I agree with them. Okay. So Jose was obviously a monster. No doubt about it, right? Okay. No doubt about it. Kitty knew about it. Record shows. She knew about it. She ignored it. And the boys knew she knew and that she ignored it. But she was not a threat. The boys tried to say in court that they were afraid that their parents were going to unalive them. Okay? Well, Kitty was not a threat. What is she going to do? Obviously, there were no guns in the house, or they would have had access. They wouldn't have had to go buy them. So, what was she going to do? And no matter what way you look at it, they unalived both their parents brutally, I might add, brutally, horribly. They planned it. Remember, Eric wrote that screenplay about unaliving their parents, rich kids unaliving their parents to gain access to the money. These boys obviously were obsessed with money. Remember, they were stealing, plagiarizing long before these double unalivings happened. They were not good kids. And a person could say they were not good kids, they were messed up because of what happened to them, and rightfully so, but still there is consequences for taking the lives of someone, no matter who they are, parents or not. There are consequences for that, right? Some people might say they should have gotten manslaughter, and then the amount of time that they have already served would be sufficient, and they should be paroled about now, right? Well, I guess you'd have an argument there, right? But the real question is, and I guess they have done things. They've started good programs in prison. They've finished. They've gotten degrees. I know that Lyle is helping prisoners with who have experienced SA. So they have done some good things. My overall question is, because they never showed remorse through either of their trials, not once did they show remorse. Are they sorry for what they did? Or are they just excusing what they did because of the SA? I'm not saying SA isn't a bad thing, because it is, guys. I'm not saying that in the least. It's a horrible thing for anyone to have to go through. But are they sorry? They felt supposedly, allegedly, as though they could not leave the home. Well, they were 19 and 21 when this happened. Why couldn't they leave? Why couldn't they leave? Because they would have had to support themselves, guys. Their father probably wouldn't have given them any money if they left the home. But they still would have had that choice versus taking the lives of their mother and father. A lot to be argued here despite public opinion. Everybody's crying, let him go, let him go, let him be free. Well, wait a minute. Let's look at the law. And had they, 1990s were a different culture, right? Totally different culture. SA and boys wasn't really recognized back then, right? So I'm glad there's awareness now, right? That's awesome, because it should be. And if the trial had happened today, would they have gotten manslaughter? Probably. We don't really know, but probably. And then, yes, they could be released. They could be paroled around this time because they had served 30 years. So now we're looking at it. There's been some political situations going on. I think Vinny touches on that, so we'll just continue on with that part.
So that brings us to the ultimate question, which is, do these convicted double murderers deserve a second chance? And there's a lot of people who think they do. There's a lot of people who think they don't. But just the fact that there are people who believe convicted double murderers deserve a second chance speaks about the nature of this case and why it is where it is and why the discussion is happening. So the Menendez brothers were scheduled to be in court today. Here they are years ago, but they had a hearing today. And we've been talking about all the things that are going on. They filed a habeas motion to get the conviction thrown out, to have a second chance at their case. There's also the case that's been filed by the sitting LADA, Gascon, who has filed this motion for a resentencing. And then you have the governor who was out there as well, Governor Gavin Newsom, talking about the potential to set them free as well, to provide some sort of relief. Now, here's the media outside the courthouse today, and there are a lot of them. Not a lot of room inside the courtroom, and no cameras inside the courtroom, so you can't see or hear anything that happened. So They had the hearing today, which seemed to be about setting a date for the resentencing sometime in January to give the newly elected DA time to get up to speed on the case. He takes office on December 2nd. A hearing was scheduled for the 11th, but that's been pushed to January. But we did have some things that happened inside the courtroom today, which was the testimony of the sisters of the two victims in the case. And they appear to be on the side of the Menendez brothers, despite the fact that their sister murdered by their children. They believe the children should be getting out. Here's Mark Geragos, who represents Menendez Brothers, after court today, and then you'll hear the voice of one of the aunts.
For those who weren't in the courtroom today, I think you could talk to anybody who was. It was a very, it was first of all, the first time that Lyle and Eric have been at least remotely in a courtroom in a number of years, number one. It also was quite a moving experience, at least from where we sit, to listen to Aunt Terry and Aunt Joan, who are respectively Jose and Kitty's older sisters. Both made impassioned pleas with the judge to send the brothers home. The judge has now set January 30th and 31st as the days for a plenary or fulsome hearing on the resentencing. He has also invoked what's called AB 600, so he has jurisdiction under that section as well, which is California law. He's going to and has heard and will ask for further briefing, and by January 30th or 31st, we're hoping that by the end of that or sometime sooner that we will in fact get the brothers released. You can tell them you want them home.
I do want them home. They should never have been in such situations as presented themselves. What can a kid do when his father's... Oh, I can't stand it.
35 years is a long time.
So there was some chatter that there was some hope, I think, from people supporting Menendez Brothers that they could be home for the holidays, for Thanksgiving. That's not happening. Christmas, that's not happening. As you heard from our Geragos, at the end of January is when all this is now scheduled for on the resentencing. So to get some insight and perspective of all this, joining me tonight, Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney, the man who prosecuted Robert Durst, John Lewin, joining us tonight. John, great to see you. Let me ask you this. One of the things that seemed to come out of today is more time for the newly elected DA, who will be sworn in, shortly, December 2nd, to get up to speed on all of this. Does that mean this could potentially not go forward on the 30th if the new DA doesn't agree with the old DA's assessment of the case? Could he withdraw all of this and just make it all go away?
So, Vinny, the first thing that I need to make sure that I clarify is that I'm here not as a representative of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office or of George Gascon, who is still the DA for a few more days. That's number one. In terms of what's going on with the process is very important. And it's the process that's really been ignored here by George Gascon from the start. To answer your question very quickly, the judge made clear that the judge, needs more time to go through everything that's involved, and that also he wants to make sure that the new DA, Nathan Hochman, is given the opportunity to review all of the information and to figure out how he wants to proceed. I think obviously that is the right thing to do, and it's especially, I think, appropriate given the history of what's happened with this case. And as I think you and your viewers know, George Gascon has had a failing administration for the last 4 years. More than about a year and a half ago, the defense filed their habeas petition, which is separate. There's going to be tomorrow is, I think, the deadline for the DA's office to file their response or opposition to the defense habeas request. The habeas request is simply legally insufficient, as it brings up issues that have nothing to do with the actual legal standard by which both defendants were convicted. But for a year and a half, that case basically sat. And then all of a sudden, when George Gascon realized that there was going to be a very damaging story coming out in the LA Times involving a woman who had murdered 2 people as a juvenile, was supposed to be tried as an adult, and then Gascon had come in, had reversed that. She had served a short time in a juvenile facility, gotten out, and murdered again. So he immediately realizes this is coming out. And of course, what does he do? He does what he always does. He schedules a press conference. And at this press conference, he starts talking about Menendez. So the biggest problem that you have here is not ultimately what is going to happen to the Menendez brothers, but it's, are we going to have a proper process, and are we going to follow and live up to our ethical responsibilities? George Gascon basically decided, for political reasons, that he was going to support a resentencing. He did that without having talked to the prosecutor who was working on the case. He doesn't know basic facts. And then he had, writing this motion, a public defender who he brought over. So let me make sure your viewers understand. The person who wrote this motion, Nancy Theberge, was a public defender for nearly 30 years. A short time ago, she was in charge of their resentencing unit. She came over and immediately is placed in charge of our resentencing unit. So she's gone from basically filing cases with the DA's office saying, hey, I want to have this individual resentenced, handling those cases, to now all of a sudden she is the person deciding. If that doesn't sound kosher to your viewers, it's because it really isn't. And that was really demonstrated by the motion they filed. That motion left out numerous pertinent facts. It looked like and read like it was written by a defense attorney, because it was. We have a duty of candor as prosecutors to the court, meaning that we are legally obligated to make sure that we advise the court of all facts, all law which we are aware of, which is relevant and pertinent to the case. And they left out in their motion numerous facts that they just ignored, kept out of the motion, because in the end, it doesn't look very good when you include those facts for Lyle and Eric Menendez's position.
Let me jump in for just a second, John, on that point. So what you're saying is a prosecutor has the candor, and usually what a prosecutor must do is reveal the stuff that makes the defendant perhaps look good, and sometimes prosecutors might get accused of not doing that. Here you're saying it's the exact opposite, that the prosecutor is not revealing things that normally would make a defendant look bad?
Yes, there are a legion of them. So when they wrote their motion, I believe they characterized what they were going to have in the motion as a brief statement of facts. What that really meant was they were going to leave out any facts which were damaging. So they started with the shooting and never, ever mentioned any of the absolutely repeated behaviors demonstrating premeditation and planning, etc. Just didn't cover it. They would say things like Lyle Menendez was a student at Princeton. Well, they never mentioned he'd been kicked out of Princeton for cheating. Eric Menendez was a student at UCLA. Well, they never mentioned that he had recently been caught burglarizing his friend's parents, 2 different residences. A bunch of information was kept out relating to their pre-offense.
Okay, so my opinion here is that nothing should be left out. Their prior history of burglary and cheating should be knowledge for all the parties involved. I don't have a problem with the resentencing issue, not at all. I don't even have a problem if they get paroled. But everything needs to be on the table, guys. It needs to be put out there so that the judge can make an informed decision in regards to their future.
Conduct, the actual way the murders were carried out, and their post-offense conduct. And clearly this is not an accident. This was left out. You can read, and I would recommend that people do this. There is a Court of Appeals opinion from California that goes through, by the court, that goes through this case. There is then a Ninth Circuit opinion that goes through this case. When you read those opinions, and remember, these aren't by the DA's office. These are by the courts, by judges. Steve Trott, a legendary Ninth Circuit judge, wrote the Ninth Circuit opinion. When you compare them to the motion that was filed by Nancy DeBurge, you end up asking yourself, are we even talking about the same case? They don't include anything. I'll just give you an example from today that's important, that demonstrates who these people are and what their allegiances are. Kathy Cady, who is an ex-DA, is representing Kitty Menendez's brother. Under Marcy's law in California, she and her client have a right to be present. So Kathy gets there today. The DA's office is responsible for making sure that she is made aware, and they get her a ticket. When she gets there, she notices that a bunch of lawyers are going into the judge's chambers. She doesn't know who those lawyers are. When they come back out, those lawyers are sitting basically on the other side of the public area with the lawyers. It turns out these were the lawyers for the other Menendez relatives who are supporting what, in fact, Mark Garagos and the defense are doing. So they go back and they speak to the judge, and Kathy Cady and her client are left out. They're not even advised. They don't even sit with the rest of them. And when Kathy asks Nancy DeBurge, hey, what's going on here? She says, oh, well, those lawyers, the family lawyers are part of, quote, Mark Garagos's team. What? That's what's going on. So here's the problem. You've got a bunch of defense attorneys in that court and no prosecutors.
Wow.
No one is serving as a prosecutor, and no one is there trying to make sure that Jose and Kitty Menendez, the victims in this case, and let's be clear, they were the ones who were murdered. You have nobody there who is trying to make sure that their rights are protected from the grave and that their loved ones' rights are protected. So again, this is not about what the ultimate decision is going to be in this case. This is about making sure that the process is followed.
John Lewin, appreciate your time and your insight, and I know we'll be speaking again as we get closer to this, and anytime anything else happens out in LA, thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll bring in our think tank, get their take on everything happening out in LA, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the shooting death of Kentucky Judge Kevin Mullins, the accused killer, local sheriff Mickey Steins, back in court today. Why would the sheriff shoot the judge? We investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
$1,000 in daily prizes.
Say this again, the next ticket I call, I want you walking in through this path here, please. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, ready for the next ticket. 6942. 6942, 6942. Right here, man.
Those are the folks trying to get inside the courtroom for the Menendez brothers. They had a little lottery for the limited seats that were left. And what a scene. What a day. Let's get some reaction. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III. Also with us, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossland and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to see everyone. All right, Al, you heard from John Lewin, who's sort of an insider, you know, speaking for himself, but kind of giving us some insight into how all this went down. You brought in a 30-year public defender that wrote the motion and was trying to get the Menendez brothers out. The man in charge of the office, out of office in a couple days. What do you think is going to happen here?
They also forgot to mention the fact that he was looking for he was looking to be reelected, and he wasn't doing too well. So he figured, what the heck, throw out the Menendez brothers and bring something along those lines. It may get me votes. And so, you know, it was definitely a political stunt. From what's being said, you know, from your guest, I mean, it is a situation that, you know, I don't think they really have a snowball's chance with regards to same. If all of that information was not included and none of that had been discussed and none of that has been put forward to the new prosecutor and he's going to start reviewing it with all of those warts, I don't see how they're getting out.
So you think this is this?
Okay. So I just want to mention as well that the outgoing DA was soft on crime, and for the past 4 years not doing well in office because people were not happy, you know, that he was too soft on crime. The incoming guy is harder on crime. So what is he going to do? You know, is the first thing that he does is going to be to set the Menendez brothers free? How's that going to look for his party line that he rode on, right? That he was going to be tougher on crime. You know, what's that going to look like if he does that? So as much as we don't want politics to be a part of it, it definitely is.
Completely changes everything, because I thought it was a sure thing. If you've got the DA on board, Darnell, if the DA is coming in saying, let this guy out, let this guy out. But now we don't know what the new DA is going to say.
Well, the sad thing about this is that this is all politics, as Al says, and I have no reason to doubt Al except for the fact that he's Al Wunsch. If Al happened to be correct today, again, which would be shocking, then the troubling part about this is that we're not looking at this as a decision based in law. It's all about politics. So if the other DA wanted to get a splash and get reelected, let's do something, you know, salacious like this. If the new DA, if somebody's in his ear saying that you should go the other way, then he may just go that way because it may be it's not politically sounded to support the Menendez brother. But the bottom line is they've been in jail for 35 years. They went in, they were really young. You got Miller versus Alabama that talks about sentencing of young kids and the developmental stages and all that stuff. And you have family members who are crying for them to come home. So I think we should focus on that and not on the politics.
Jennifer Brandt, what are your thoughts now? Because, I mean, we don't know what the new DA is going to think.
Okay, just going by what the last guy just said, focusing on what public opinion and family wants, no. I mean, you take those things into consideration, right? But you need to take into consideration the facts surrounding the case. And the facts because if they're looking at resentencing, right, they need to look at the facts of the case in correlation to the laws of today. That's what they should be looking at. not public opinion and what the family wants. I mean, a point of taking that into consideration, yes. But the focus should be on the law, upon what happened and how what happened is affected, how the law looks at what happened, how the law today looks at what happened. So, yeah, I just don't agree with the last guy on where the focus should be.
Think of this. We know that he ran on actually prosecuting criminals in Los Angeles, unlike the current DA. So what do you think the chances are that the first high-profile thing he does is set 2 double murderers free?
Well, Vinny, first of all, I hate when Al and Darnell fight like they do, but, it is part of the think tank. But I really think that there is a political climate going on here, new DA or not. And their case has really been in the spotlight with the Netflix show and the documentary. So a lot of people are talking about this. There's a lot of hype around it. And you've got family members saying that these men should have never been sentenced like they have for so long, and they, should be let free. And so I think there's a lot of outside pressure on the DA. It'll be interesting to see if he takes a stance now that we have huge momentum and a lot of people thinking that the Menendez brothers are going to be released. So it's a question of whether he will take a different stance at this point. Maybe he will, just because he is new and wants to show that this is the way he's going to handle things in his own way and not just do what was done before. So it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, it was. I believed it was a sure thing as long as Gascon was there, but now the way the election went, the schedule went, this thing is pushed till January. Gascon is yesterday's news. They also have the opportunity, Gavin Newsom could step in for clemency, but that's a risky political move as well. He may just say, whatever the DA says, I'm fine with. So we shall see. We'll stay on it. Think tank staying with us because I've got a red tie on. Oh, it was verdict day.
Okay. So that was the end of what he was talking about with the Menendez brothers. So, the thing that I don't like is that this seems to be very political now. And it shouldn't be. It's like I said, they should take a look at what Lyle and Eric did and judge it by the laws today and go from there. That's what should happen, right? It shouldn't be a political thing. This new DA should not have to worry about how he's going to look. He shouldn't, because, this is just not good timing at all for these brothers. Because above all, I want things to be fair. Okay? Do I agree with what they did? I absolutely do not. They had a choice. They could have walked away from the home. They did not want to walk away from the home because they would lose the money, guys. What is their dad going to do? Physically hold them down? He's not going to do that. But they could have walked away. They could have reported him. They could have even pressed charges against him if they wanted to. But they didn't because of the money. Money talks, guys. I'm sure that I'm going to get a lot of backlash about this video because of popular opinion. But I'm for the law. And if the law now says they should be paroled, then I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I just don't want to see any kind of political arena surrounding this, because it's already there. I don't want to see decisions made because of political pressure. It needs to be the law. Needs to be the law. You know. And yes, I do believe that the Menendez brothers, Eric and Lyle, were very selfish, very spoiled young men when they committed this crime. They were. Have they changed over 35 years? I don't think they're spoiled anymore. I think when you're in prison, you're not really spoiled anymore. And I guess my biggest thing in looking at the two of them is I hope that they feel remorse for what they did. Because if they've spent 35 years in prison and they still have no remorse, that's scary, guys. That's scary. But if they go free, if the court says, yes, they should be on parole, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. And then I hope that they live a good life. So, January 30th and 31st of 2025 is when we're going to hear more on this case. So we'll take a look at it more then. I want to thank you guys for being here. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching another episode of Granny's Crime Busters. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe and like and even share the content. You can follow us on any of our other social media platforms at YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We really appreciate you guys, and you can also email us at grannyscrimebusters@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.